So in our last segment, we were discussing sort of some of the problems with a traditional or a traditional approach to financial planning.
Right.
One of them being you've got these markets that are driven by fear and greed.
Right.
You don't want to put your trust there. The other one being that sometimes we can use godly principles of hard work, saving, etc.,
Sure.
to create wealth. And then instead of trusting in God, we end up trusting in our wealth. We see that happening all throughout the Old Testament. We see that happening all throughout church history.
Yes.
It's a very common problem. So here's my question. Practically speaking, how can I move out of this conventional economy or the world's economy, even as it's conceived in some, commonly, I've heard this all the time in Christian circles, like this is sort of the milk that we were fed from our youth,
Right.
How can we move it into something more resembling this kingdom economy?
Right.
What are the steps? What are the ways we can do it?
So we really need, in order to take a vastly different approach, we need some kind of catalyst or external catalyst that kind of gets us off our normal way of operating and thinking.
Okay.
Because I think the temptation is very simply, hey, I want to trust God more. I know what you're saying is fundamentally true. Like this economy, there's something broken about it, and there's something that's not going to last about it, and there's something that's not really God-centric about it.
Right.
But, okay, so give me some self-help tips for how to do a few things incrementally where I can maybe pay off a debt or perform an action in my financial life, maybe switch from one investment to another to help solve this problem.
Now, do you do self-help stuff? Maybe
Self-help, can I help you?
A little Tony Robbins.
It's the power of positive thinking that gets us through anything.
Have you ever worn a mic that comes down here and maybe a little?
No, I must say I have not.
Okay, well, it's too bad. I was going to hire you if that was the case, but it sounds like that's not your shtick. So
yeah, we need God's help.
We need God's help,
and
not self-help.
How do we realize we need God's help? I think sometimes it takes a major event, can even be a traumatic event in our lives, to ask God for help.
Okay.
I remember a friend of mine said, and this is probably a phrase that people have heard, sometimes you can only find out that Jesus is all you need when Jesus is all you have.
Right.
Now, what is that statement? That statement's all about, sometimes it might take a situation where we have no other help to turn to but God himself. We can't earn our way out of it. We can't work our way out of it. We can't maneuver our way out of it. Sometimes God will put us in those positions where only he can solve the problem.
So I come to you, Greg Healy, not self-help, but financial guru, Greg. Help me. I want to get out of, this worldly economy. I want to walk in God's economy. I want to walk in faith. How can I start to do that? And you say to me, you need to have a crisis.
A crisis?
Yeah.
What fun is a crisis?
Is that it? Is that what needs to happen? What does that look like?
I don't know.
Is there another way?
I'll tell you what, for me,
sure,
it took a crisis.
For you, it took a crisis.
I had to get shaken out of my understanding and my expectations.
Okay.
I really did. And, maybe that's how it'll happen for you or anybody else.
Sure.
That sometimes we get put into a corner to test our faith.
Okay.
And God says, okay, choose. Do you choose me or do you choose other?
Right.
And Jesus talked about this when he said to the rich young ruler, the rich young ruler said to Jesus, hey, look, I've followed all the commandments all my life. I've been a good boy. What else does it take? Thinking he had accomplished what he needed.
Right.
And what did Jesus say?
Jesus said, you're cool. You've done a great job. Go home, be blessed, be well.
Yeah.
See you in the kingdom.
Come join our merry band of followers and bring your money with you. Because we could use a few dollars in the treasury.
That's right. He said for $39.99 a month, you can be part of our club.
Of course, he didn't say this. He
we'll
said
send you a mug.
He knew there was an issue in this rich young ruler's heart.
Okay.
And the issue was what?
He loved money.
He loved money.
Ooh.
He loved money.
Right.
Why did he love money? Because he was a rich man.
Right.
He had it made in some sense,
Right.
because of his money.
Right.
So Jesus was saying, like, the issue you've got for you personally is you've got to choose. Do you choose your riches or will you choose me?
Right.
And will you follow me? And the rich young ruler declined the invitation.
Right.
So could it be as radical as that? It could be. It
Wow.
could be that God might ask us to let it all go.
To sell
Now-
everything. And certainly the apostles and those who were following Jesus, while they weren't as rich
Yes.
as this man, presumably, they had done that.
Right.
They
So
had already left everything.
I don't think the parable is there to say anyone who wants to follow Jesus must sell everything they have. That's the precondition by this contract signed on the dotted line. But instead, it's the Holy Spirit convicting each one as needed. For in order for you to follow Jesus, in order for you to take up your cross, deny yourself, those were Jesus' words, and follow him, it may be different for each person. And so the disciples, they had to give up their careers. Right?
Sure.
They're successful fishermen, doctors,
Tax collectors.
tax collectors, very lucrative business. So they had to decide, will I follow Jesus or keep the career going? And part of that decision is always, well, what about my financial future?
Right.
How am I going to provide for my family? These guys were all married. Peter
Right.
had a family,
Right.
right? As we were talking about, his family's business was fishing, and they were pretty good fishermen, and it made a nice living. Like they'd catch their fish, they'd go down to the market. When they got that haul of 153 fish, I bet that brought in a pretty good wage at the market.
I bet it did. I
And
bet
so
it did.
Jesus said to those guys, hey, look, come follow me. And they had to leave that behind. But
So your point is, I'm just going to interrupt you a little bit.
Please.
Your point is, rather than an incremental approach, in other words, like, teach me how to do this.
yeah,
It's sort of like there's a departure.
yes.
There's a moment where you have to jump into the water, if
Right.
you will. It's almost like shifting. It's a radical shift.
It's a radical question that
Right.
God will ask of us. And each person has a different set of circumstances and timing and what God will ask of a given person.
Right.
Right? So for me, it was, will you trust me in having the business that you have, that I'm going to use it for my purposes no matter what? And since your business is in finance, would you be willing to sacrifice your money to me? Like, would you give that up?
Wow.
Would you go to zero and trust me, even if your business isn't making a profit, or even if it doesn't seem like there's any way forward?
Right.
Would you do it? And because God had made this promise, I had a choice. Like, do I choose to believe and step into that by faith, as crazy and radical as it is? Or do I not? Do I go back to what I know,
Sure.
take things into my own hands? I have some skills and talents, and I can work hard.
Sure.
I've proven that in my career, so
You could easily have gone back to
I could rationalize
A Wall
why
Street
I
career.
need to take care of my family and how I need to provide, because that's right and good, being a good steward and logical.
right.
Or I can trust that God actually has a greater plan for my life,
Right.
like the disciples had a greater plan for their
So
lives.
this is cool because I feel like the first step in entering God's economy
Yes.
is saying yes
Yes.
to an invitation from the
Yes.
Lord. Maybe that's a better thing than it could come in a crisis, but it
Sure.
comes down to a faith question of God saying, will you follow me?
Right.
Will you trust me?
Right.
And it could be particularly related to business or finances, like give everything, or it could just be like, hey, come follow me.
Right.
But that's sort of the entry point, if you will,
Right.
is responding to that kind of a question
Absolutely.
from the Lord.
Absolutely.
Let's
And for
say-
every person, it's a different type of
It's
question.
a different kind of question.
But it probably is no less radical.
No, absolutely.
Whatever that means for you, it's an important question, and how you respond, I think, means everything about your relationship with God.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to pick this up in just a second and talk more about the practicals of moving into God's economy.